in this press we want to raise a few concerns which has arisen out of certain positions which the government has taken. Few days ago, the Minister of Trade, Commerce, Food Security and Cooperative Development, Mr. Samarasinha, tells us that the government is planning to import 70,000 tons of rice, despite the fact that we have produced adequately around 4.8 million metric tons of rice paddy for the year 2023-2024. So we have produced enough rice, but the rice has gone missing, or the paddy has gone missing, and the consumers do not have rice. So therefore, they are going to import rice into the country. Now it's very strange. If we had produced enough rice in this country, 4.8 million metric tons of rice, now where has all the rice gone is the question which we are asking. So we would think, now this is not the first time this has happened, this is not the first time rice has been hoarded. So we would expect the government to take decisive steps. Now people are telling us we need to give government time and so on. So let's say we have to give the government time. At least we expected the government to come and say, this is a horrendous act, holding people from essential food, which is rice. Holding people from accessing this essential food is a horrendous crime. We would take decisive steps against those who are hoarding. We would take penal action against those who are hoarding. And that is the kind of political position which we would have expected from Mr. Vasantha, the Minister of Trade, Commerce, Food Security and Cooperative Development. But instead he says that we are going to develop, we don't have enough data, and that we are going to develop a data system. And in the future, if people act this way, we are going to deduct points from them. Or some very wishy-washy, lukewarm statement is what we heard from the minister. Now, all of us know that large-scale rice mill owners obtain loans from banks at very, very concessionary interest rates. And the banks have information on where these storage is. And if the government really wants, they can actually track where these storages are and where these paddy is stored and so on, despite the fact that we do admit that the Consumer Affairs Authority may not have enough capacity to identify the exact problems. And we have to give the government time for all of this. But the question which we are asking is not about what the government ought to do, but why is the government nervous to tell the public that there are hoarders in this country. There are large-scale rice mill owners who are hoarding rice so that they can make profits by starving people, and we as the government will not tolerate that. Why is the government shying away from taking a decisive political position? So while all of this is happening, we remember a few days before during the parliamentary elections, the United States government issues a travel warning, and soon as the United States issues a travel warning, we don't know why the travel warning, to date we don't know that, right? We don't even know whether that travel warning was credible. To date we don't know that. But immediately the government goes and arrests people, including 2 former political prisoners who have been in prison for decades and were discharged as innocent. Without any charges, they were discharged. And now the government goes and arrests those same people, Swendran and Niroshan, and now they are in prison under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which the government said during the electoral campaign that they are going to repeal. The government has promised that it would release 10 political prisoners. After the government came to power, the government has been silent on it. So while the government refuses to take political positions on actual criminals, rice hoarders, or does not give the government's position on these rice hoarders, the government continues to arrest persons under this draconian Prevention of Terrorism Act now what we can see is without any credible evidence, and the government refuses to keep its electoral promises of releasing political prisoners, which Mr. Vijitha Herath, just before the parliament election, said the government will take steps to release. So you find people incarcerated in prisons for decades, and the government doesn't want to take steps on that. But the government is also refusing to take steps against actual criminals who are keeping people from essential food of this country. Now, on another aspect, we also saw the Public Security Minister, Mr. Ananda Vijaypala, giving certain conditions on memorialization. Now, as the People's Struggle Alliance, we have taken a decisive position that memorialization must be given to people unconditionally. And early this month, we saw memorialization happening in the South without any disruption or without any conditions or without anyone having the need to make political statements and saying these are the conditions on which this memorialization will be allowed. But when it comes to the northern people, when it comes to memorialization in the north, consecutive governments have found the need to put conditions, banning memorialization, and then this government finds the need to put conditions on this memorialization of minority communities. And this brings us to the question, is it the position of this government that when Tamil people remember they are dead, they have to be conditioned on what are the parameters on this remembrance? We ask this question because essentially when you place conditions, what the government is saying is, yes, we are all equal, but some people are more equal than the other, and some people need to be told what their place is, and they should not go beyond that, because if they go beyond that, we as the government would place a check on that. That is essentially what the Minister of State Security was telling yesterday. And then the other aspect of the fact that this government, the NPP, several members of the NPP used to be at the Arulingam site. They know what police brutality is. They know what it is to be brutalized by the police. And yet, a few days ago, we saw youth protesting in front of government offices regarding Korean visas which they legitimately obtained from the previous government. And when they were asking this government to honor that commitment and send them for foreign employment because they don't have proper employment here because this country is in a state of crisis, the government resorted to blaming the protesters for a fault which was committed by the previous government, which was committed by Mr. Manush Nanyakara and the Foreign Employment Bureau. And without taking responsibility and saying, no, we will look into this matter. We will look into why certain visas were issued in this particular manner. We would inquire from the former Labour Minister why he got into these strange deals. Without looking into any of that, the government has resorted to blaming these people, the Sri Lankan citizens, who were attempting to go abroad to earn a living for their family by saying, no, they will try to skip over to another country and so on. So, people who had voted for this government, they keep telling us that give the government time, and we do agree. This is a new government, it's new to power, it's new to governance, and we need to keep the government time. But the message which the government should be getting from the people, it's not about the fact that the people are willing to give the government time. The message this government ought to be taking is that people have voted for system change. People have not voted for new faces to come to power and do the exact same thing which previous governments have done. But that is what the government has been doing. Coming into power, entering into the same debt restructuring arrangement which Ranil Wickremesinghe entered into, have not taken a position on the EPF question. Now they are saying that they are going to lift import bans on luxury vehicles. While we are still struggling, we are still dealing with the question of how are we going to pay the loans back. Putting the blame on people when they protest and ask legitimate questions on their foreign employment status. Not allowing people to freely memorialize, not taking a position on the release of political prisoners, despite the fact that during election time they have said that they would release political prisoners. So the government has been voted into place with the promise of, people have voted the government to power with this mandate, with this large mandate saying we want system change. So that is the message which the government ought to be taking from the people. And maybe the government needs time to implement policy reforms and so on. But what the government cannot be excused on is in not taking correct political positions and giving the correct message to people, particularly people like the large rice mill owners who are currently hoarding rice and keeping entire population, the entire Sri Lankan population, from our essential food, which we so badly need in this country right now. And that I do not think we need to excuse the government for. Thank you.